I think the discussion about trophies and trophy size is an interesting one. Of course, I would lie if I didn't like shooting a heavy-pearled, dark-antlered, long-tined buck with big coronets, but I would say that's less than 1% of the bucks hunted in general. My name is Franz-Albrecht Oettingen-Spielberg, and come and join me for the management and hunt of my favorite 5 game species. My enjoyment comes out of taking the regional type and trying to manage that herd in a way that they have the least amount of hunting stress. We do that by not hunting them all year round, but we go for particular times in the year. For example, we hunt in May, then again in September. In between we have the rut for a couple of weeks at the end of July, and then again in the winter we have a couple more. And in those different intervals, we try and hunt and shoot as many roe deer as we need to hit that stately quota that we have to bring year by year.
It's early in the morning. The sun's just about to come up on the horizon. We're gonna go and have a look for a buck. On his right side, he only has 2 points, and on the other side he's a normal 6-pointer. He's an old buck. He lives with 2 females that are both tagged from 2 years ago, and he lives in that valley behind us in the middle of the field. So we have to be lucky to have him relatively close, because he could be anywhere in that valley, and shooting distances can go up to 1 kilometer, which obviously we can't do. And stalking in there is difficult because it's just open fields. So we're going to try our luck and hope that he's somewhere on the other side of that hill within distance.
Like I said, I love a good Roebuck trophy, but for me, the Roebuck trophy I've found in the last years has been more about the history that I've had with a particular buck. So following the bucks from a second head up to the time when we take them, and understanding with the pictures that we take year by year how that evolution of that buck has gone, and why, for example, in his 4th year he suddenly had a big drop in quality. That really gives me a high sense of enjoyment, because I think I'm beginning to understand more about the species. And it's very strange when you have history with an animal like that. Of course you grow emotionally attached to it in some way, and it becomes an extra emotion hunting that animal, and then it sometimes almost feels empty when you have hunted that animal, because every time you drive past the area where he used to live, you almost miss it. But then of course it's part of nature and it's part of life, that then another buck comes into that territory, and then you start the process again.
Spotted them. Maybe 250 yards below us. But the vegetation is so high, we need to find some more elevation. You can see that some of the females are ear tagged, so we know exactly how old they are. The buck sadly isn't, but we think he's 5 to 6 years old. They're very calm, the wind is in our favor. So we're going to slowly stalk into the field ahead of us and try and get a shot. We have a bit of a different plan this evening. We're just gonna sit in one spot and wait for a particular buck that is also ear tagged. And maybe if we see him, maybe have a look and try and figure out how old you think he is in terms of his appearance. And if we do get to shoot him, I'll tell you later how old he is.
He's a buck that we see once or twice a year around this time of the year, and then he disappears. We don't know where he goes during the summer, and he lives in a relatively open field area in a small piece of forest that is not bigger than, let's say, 4 or 5 hectares. That particular buck also, even though we put out trail cameras all around, has never been on a trail camera picture.
He usually comes out to feed this side in the evenings.
How that is possible is beyond me. I don't know whether he has a particular disgust for trail cameras, or maybe it's luck, but over these years it's impossible because every other animal in that area is on the trail cam besides him. He's never ever featured on a picture.
So how old is the buck? I think it's interesting. If I didn't know, when you saw he's marked with a white ear tag, and if I didn't know how old he was, I would have never expected him to be that age. But this buck is actually 8 years old. And for an 8-year-old, I think he has a pretty thin neck. And it's surprising that he's already lost so much of his winter coat. He's blind on his right eye. And I look forward to seeing his bottom jaw. He came out early tonight. And there was a female above him in the woods. That's why he suddenly went up to the corner of the wood, and I was actually scared he was going to jump in and maybe be gone for the rest of the night. But that all worked out perfectly. What can we say? Now, if you look at the coordinates, they're not particularly angled towards the bottom. I would say his head doesn't look particularly old. His number is 156 and he was marked 8 years ago. What he does have, he's blind on his right side. He has quite a few ticks. He's actually already changing into his summer hide, which, as we said before, normally the older bucks change later and the younger bucks, like the yearlings, would be changing their coat right now. I always also look at the ears. Also with stags and fallow bucks, it makes a big difference. If they have old scars and then the corners of their ears have little scars all around, that usually is a good sign for age. Less with roe deer, more with stags and fallow bucks. But I find it pretty incredible that this buck is 8 years old, and I don't think I would have guessed that he's that age. I think if I had seen him, I would probably said he's probably a 4 or 5 year old. Maybe even younger, because you saw how thin the neck was while he was walking over here. So let's have a look at the teeth. If you see that, yes, the teeth are nicely worn down. Not only the M1, but also all the way in the front. There's a serious wear all the way to the back. But I would have expected an 8-year-old buck to have a heavier wear than this. I would have probably put 6 years on this buck. So again, you can see how individual teeth wear on roebucks is. He's obviously got a very good set of teeth, and that's why they're not worn down more than they are. I would not put this buck to be 8 years old, but we know 100% that he's 8 years old because he was marked at a fawn with a white 156, and we know where he is marked and we know which year. So I think it just gives another wonderful example about how important it is to understand your population, no matter how small or big the hunting area is. Especially with roe deer, a hunting area doesn't have to be big to do a good management in it. And to know your animals, whether it's the males or the females. To do good management, you have to know them. And I think this is a prime example. He doesn't look as old as he is, neither from a face, neither from his set of horns, and also from his teeth. If he wasn't earmarked, we would have put him in a completely different category. So again, you can see it's really not a very big neck. He does have hairlings, which we call Haarlinge in German. Apparently the translation is Hairlings. That's nothing serious, but that's why he's almost hairless in some parts. As you can see, he does have ticks. It's not, I mean, there's not a lot of them, but there are some. Sometimes another thing that we look at in terms of age is this part of the breast here. If this is prominent and comes out substantially, that can be a sign of age, but as we always say, there's an exception to every rule.
We have the oldest buck that we have currently that is still alive, that is tagged, is 13 years old. What we try to do is, in that same year, he's tagged with a blue tag, his number is 35. And in that same year, we left, I think it was 5 or 6 others, so they all had their blue tags. But we decided that if we feel that they're getting weak, or if we feel that they're not healthy, we would take them. And we wanted to see how far can it get. So most of the others we shot between the age of 7, 8, because they just didn't look great in the spring. Either their body weight was going down, or they didn't really change their winter coat into the summer coat, and obviously we didn't want them to suffer. But this one buck is now 13 years old. He's still round in the body, he's strong, his trophy looks good, and you certainly wouldn't think that he is the age that he's at. And we're going to keep him as long as he looks healthy. And he's become a real personality in our forest because everybody knows him.
Our plan for this morning is to go and hunt the same buck that we got close to a couple of days ago, but he busted us and turned and took his females, and we haven't seen him since. We know the wind direction. We're going to go and try and sneak into the rape field or close to the rape field, position ourselves and just wait, because I think with the amount of rain that has come down, they're going to be moving out of their cover at some point. And hopefully, if we're lucky, we could get a shot. That was one of the bucks that we stalked a few times in the last few days. He has been smart in outsmarting us. We've had a terrible thunderstorm last night. There's been a lot of wind. We've actually had quite a lot of trees fall over. And it's late in the morning. It's maybe just before 11. And it's literally just stopped pouring down. And we thought that we would position ourselves here because we know that he likes this rape field. We have good wind, and here we have a great overview. And literally 20 minutes after we came here, they started moving out into the other side of that hill. I think that they were going to move over to that little forest that you can see, probably to feed. And wonderful situation. It was probably about 230 meters. We set up perfectly. We had all the time in the world. And I'm very happy we managed to take him. He's a special buck. Also, he has moved his territory slightly closer to the main road than he did in the last few years. That's usually down to what type of crop is planted where in the fields. And the rape field is closer to the main road this year than it usually is. And yeah, therefore, we were just hesitant. Old buck, very nice old buck. Actually, I saw it wrong. I thought that he only had a fork on this side, but he's actually got a small point in the back, so he is a 6-pointer. Very nice dark antlers, nice coronets in the bottom. He's got a big head, big body, and he's an old buck. He's got a pretty tough wound, probably from fighting. He has no ticks, which is great. In some years, depending on the weather conditions, there's a lot of ticks here, and they can contract all sorts of diseases, and for humans it's also bad, especially Lyme disease, which a lot of people have had here in Germany, and that can be life-threatening. So this seems to be a year with few ticks, which of course is great for the health of the roe deer. So the tradition really is that there's 3 twigs that are broken every time we shoot an animal here. One is the last bite for the buck. One is usually put on the hat of the person who shot the animal, and one is laid on the animal like this, and depending whether it's a male or it's a female,
the broken part of the plant either shows, is looking towards the front or the back of the animal. For a female, this part looks to the back of the animal. For a male, this part looks to the front. So the plant would be, usually it's a tree, but as we are out here in the middle of the fields, we can't take any twigs off trees. It would be placed like this, and this just shows that this animal is now owned by the hunter. So I think this comes from the olden days when something was taken in a hunting area, and before it was able to be taken out of the hunting area, you maybe had to get some people from the village to help you drag the animal back down. And if you had placed this on an animal, another hunter that came past knew that this animal had been taken by another hunter and had already been found and is in the process of being taken out of the hunting area or recovered. Let's have another look at the teeth and try and determine how old the buck really is. So here you can see the teeth in general are nicely worn down, and the M1, which is the molar one, is basically losing all its structure inside. There's no more pointy parts. So I would say this buck is 5 years old. Some bucks have stronger teeth, some bucks have less stronger teeth. It's a little bit like with humans as well. It's a genetic thing. So you can never be 100% sure, but we've been able to collect a lot of bottom jaws of bucks and does. So we know pretty much what the average lower jaw looks like. And if I compare that to all the ones that we have, this one would be a 5-year-old buck. I think we know maybe 10% of what goes on in a roe deer population, and there's so much more to learn, and I find it fascinating. It sometimes gets a bit depressing going to bed and really knowing that you know nothing, but then again you wake up the next morning and it's just incredible to go back out and see them, and getting to know your population, managing it to the highest standard possible. And then, of course, also harvesting a good food source, harvesting some nice trophies is something that I see similar to harvesting forestry or harvesting in the agricultural sense.